My name is Clara Whitlow. I'm 25 years old, and what I'm about to share isn't just a memory, it's a scar. This is a real story about a house I inherited, a place that breathed like it was alive, and the voice that started speaking to me from behind the attic door. Everyone said I was imagining it, that I was grieving, confused. But what happened inside that house still follows me in my dreams. This is not just horror. This is what happens when the dead forget how to stay dead. Subscribe, like, and share this story if you believe some houses remember more than they should. This story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries. When I first saw the house, it didn't feel haunted. It felt patient. It was a Victorian relic at the edge of Ashburn Pines, passed down to me by an aunt. I never met Edith Whitlow, my father's estranged sister. I didn't even know she existed until the lawyer called me. She left everything to you, he said. House, land, contents. I had just lost my father. I was grieving lost, so when the will said I needed to visit the property before making decisions, I agreed. I thought maybe it would feel like closure, but it didn't. From the first moment I stepped onto the porch, it felt like something had been waiting. The air was still, not silent, still like the house had paused in time. The moment Edith died, dust covered everything. Old wallpaper peeled like skin, but nothing was broken, nothing disturbed, as if someone still lived there. Still watched. I wandered room to room, feeling like an intruder. Photos of people I didn't recognize. An old phonograph still plugged in a calendar stuck on October 1986. The attic door caught my eye. Black wood, heavy padlocked. I asked the lawyer about it. Later he hesitated. She never opened it, said it was off limits. Even changed the lock when the original door started rattling at night. I laughed nervously. He didn't. She also said if you ever stay the night, don't go up there, no matter what you hear. I stayed the night, not out of bravery but stubbornness, and because I didn't believe in ghosts. That changed at 3:12 a.m. The house groaned once, then again, then fell silent until I heard a soft knock from above the attic. I froze. Another knock, louder, then something scraped across the floor up there. I lay in bed, covers tight, breath shallow. Maybe it was the wood, maybe an animal, but then a whisper right above me, so faint I almost thought it was wind. Clara. I sat up, heart thundering. Silence. Then the voice again. Come up. I didn't move, not that night. The next morning I checked the attic door. The lock was still in place, untouched, but the floor below, it was wet, not dripping, just damp, like someone had been standing there waiting. I told myself it was a trick of the mind, stress, grief. I stayed another night again. 3:12 a.m. knock in whispers, but this time the lock on the attic door was unlatched, still closed but unlocked. I should have left, but something in me, curiosity or madness, wanted to know what was behind that door. What had Edith locked away for decades? So I waited until sunrise and I opened it. Dust exploded in my face. The air inside was ice cold, but what hit me hardest wasn't the chill, it was the smell, like rotting flowers and burnt wax. The attic was filled with old furniture, dolls, books, crates, and in the center a wooden chair facing the only window, and on it a dress, laced ivory, still holding its shape like someone had just stepped out of it, but no one was there, no one visible. I reached for it. The moment my fingers brushed the fabric, I heard a sigh, close, too close. I turned, and the attic door slammed shut behind me. Sound of the attic door slamming behind me wasn't loud. It was quiet, deliberate, like a hand gently pressing it shut. Not the wind, not chance. I spun toward it, heart pounding so hard I thought it might drown out whatever came next. I tried the handle, locked. No, the lock had re-engaged from the outside. I was sealed inside with her. The attic wasn't large, but in that moment it felt endless. The shadows crawled like they were watching. The cold thickened like fog, and the chair with the dress was no longer empty. I froze because now the dress wasn't simply resting on the chair, it was draped on someone, a woman. I could barely see her face, but the silhouette was unmistakable. Thin, tall arms, still like a porcelain doll. Her head was tilted downward, the strands of black hair falling like curtains. The dress looked exactly the same, a perfect fit. She didn't move. I didn't breathe. My voice cracked when I whispered, hello? Her head lifted, not all at once, slow, like it hurt, and then she stood. Sound of the wood creaking beneath her feet was soft, but every step felt like thunder in my bones. She didn't walk toward mesh, floated. I backed away. Please, I stammered. I don't mean to be here. I didn't know. She raised her hand and pointed to the floorboards beneath me. Look down there. Scratched into the wood, barely visible beneath dust and rot, were the words. I never left. I don't remember falling or screaming or running to the far corner of the attic, but I remember waking and finding myself on the floor, curled up, the morning sun peeking through the window. The attic door opened. The dress gone, the chair Empty, but in my pocket something I hadn't placed there, a photograph, old black and white, faded a woman in the dress standing in the attic window alone, smiling faintly on the back, written in the same looping script I saw on the attic floor. They buried me in the walls. I left the house that day, went straight to the Ashburn County Archive. I needed to know who she was. The librarian looked at the photo, paled slightly, then disappeared into the back. For nearly an hour she returned with a single page of newsprint. June 13, 1929, Whitlow bride disappears on wedding day. Local seamstress Evelyn Maddox, 22, vanished hours before her ceremony at the Whitlow estate. Rumors persist of foul play, but no remains have been found. Groom Arthur Whitlow never remarried. The Whitlows, me family, the house I inherited wasn't just old, it was a crime scene, unsolved, unspoken, buried. Just like Evelyn Maddox that night, I returned not because I wanted to, because I had to. I needed to know why me. Why? Now, I stood at the attic door. It was ajar inside. Silence. I stepped in slowly, holding the photo in my hand. Evelyn? I whispered nothing. Then the phonograph downstairs began to play. I hadn't touched it in days, but the music, the crackling waltz, floated through the house like a memory trying to rise. I descended the stairs. The record spun on its own. The woman in the dress stood by the player, only this time she looked at me. Her eyes were hollow, her smile faint, and in her hands she held the veil she never wore. She whispered, "I want to go home." Then she turned and walked into the wall, not through a doorway, through the wall, disappearing, leaving behind nothing but the smell of dried roses and something metallic. I knew what I had to do. I returned to the attic, tore away the floorboards, and beneath them, hidden in a long narrow space sealed with bricks and plaster, I found her, not whole, not intact, but their Evelyn Maddox. What remained of her, still wearing the dress, still holding the veil? They did bury her in the walls of my family? They never spoke of it because it was one of them who did. I called the police. They came, they dug, they confirmed, they asked questions. I couldn't answer. I gave them the letter, the photo, the article, but I kept the veil. I don't know why. Maybe to remember, maybe to finish what Evelyn started. They laid her to rest properly, finally 100 years too late, and for a while the house went quiet until one night, 3:12 a.m., a knock from the attic. After Evelyn's bones were found and buried, I truly believed the house would settle, that the whispers would stop, the knocks would cease, and the weight pressing on my chest every night would finally lift. And for a while it did. No sounds, no shadows, no dreams filled with dead eyes and rotted lace. I had done what no one else had. I gave Evelyn Maddox the peace she'd been denied for nearly a century. But peace in that house is like air in a tomb. It doesn't last a week after her burial. The temperature in the house began to drop again, not in the attic, in the basement. And this time I didn't need a whisper to tell me something was wrong. It started with the mirror, an old vanity in the upstairs hallway, untouched since I moved in. One night passing by, I saw handprints on the glass, child-sized, smudged from the inside. The reflection behind me was wrong, not reversed, not warped, just wrong. Hallway light flickered above me. I turned away. When I looked back, the mirror was clean. Another night, the kitchen faucet turned itself on, then soft thumping from behind the basement door. Not the attic anymore. The basement, the place I hadn't dared to open since I moved in it, was sealed with rusted nails and wooden beams from the inside, and I was too consumed with the attic to even consider what lay below. But now something wanted out. One afternoon, I found a note on the kitchen table. It hadn't been there the day before. A scrap of parchment, old, brittle on it. She wasn't the only one buried. I checked every drawer, every corner of the house, every hidden compartment in every wall. Nothing but the basement door. The wooden beam ceiling, it had been ripped apart from the inside. The next night I opened it. It smelled of mildew and ashes. The stairs, grown like they hadn't held weight in decades. I descended with a flashlight in one hand, Evelyn's photo in the other, as if she might protect me from whatever else was down there. The basement was small, claustrophobic, stone walls, a broken furnace, old crates, and in the center a mirror, cracked, covered in black fabric. Why would there be a mirror down here? And why was it chained to the wall? I pulled the fabric away, looked inside. My reflection blinked before I did, then smiled, but I didn't. He dropped the flashlight. It shattered, and in that pitch darkness I heard the same voice from the attic, but different. Not Evelyn's. This one was lower, male, closer. "Thank you for letting her go." My knees locked. Now I'm awake. I ran out of the basement, out of the house. I stayed with a motel clerk who didn't ask questions when I paid in cash, shaking barefoot, carrying a flashlight and a cracked photo frame. But I couldn't stay away, not now, not when I understood the full horror. Evelyn wasn't haunting the house because of her death. She was protecting it. She stayed to keep something else locked in. And when I opened that attic, I Didn't just free Harry Freed, returned to the house during the day, burned sage, lit candles, whispered prayers, none of it mattered. The mirror had moved. It now sat in the attic, and on its scratch marks like fingernails from the inside. I called a priest. He came, he blessed the house, tossed holy water on the attic floor, and laughed when nothing happened. Then the door slammed shut behind him. I never saw him again. The police found his crucifix in the bathtub. Nothing else. I couldn't run anymore. This thing, the shadow, it wasn't bound to the house. It had been dormant, buried beneath Evelyn's grief, Evelyn's spirit, her screams and sighs and sorrow. Now it was awake, feeding. I began dreaming of a man in the mirror, tall, twisted, grinning, with a mouth far too wide, always whispering my name backwards. Aralk. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. One night I found bruises on my arms shaped like hands. The mirror in the attic began fogging on its own, and I saw things in it I couldn't explain. Evelyn crying, blood, my father, mouth stitched shut, me hanging from the attic beams. Every time I looked, a new scene, new warning. Then last night I found a note under my pillow. If I stayed to keep it locked, why are you still here? It was her, Evelyn, begging me to finish what she started, to put the thing back. I don't know how, but I know this. The attic isn't haunted anymore. The mirror is, and whatever lives inside it doesn't want peace, it wants out. I spent the final 3 nights in that house, fully awake, back to the wall, Evelyn's veil gripped in my fist like a talisman. Sleep wasn't safe anymore. I didn't trust the house, the mirror, or even my own reflection, because it wasn't just watching me now, it was learning me. Mirrors are supposed to reflect light, but this one absorbed it. The more I stared at it, the more I felt it blinking back at me like an eye, ancient and alive. It had moved again. I found it one morning at the foot of my bed. I hadn't heard it, I hadn't touched it, but there it was, wrapped in the black lace Evelyn once wore at her mother's funeral, with a single word scrawled across the glass. In fog, stay. I tried to destroy it. I really did. Took a hammer to its frame, shattered it to pieces, but when I returned to the room, it was whole again, not just restored, waiting. And this time my reflection smiled before I did. He called Evelyn one last time, not with a voice, but through the veil. I laid it at the attic center, lit every candle I had, and whispered her name into the floorboards. And for a moment so real it hurts to recall, she came. No shadow, no scream, just her, pale, calm, tired. She knelt beside me and said, "He was never buried, only trapped." I asked her, "What is it?" Her eyes drifted to the mirror. A priest once called it an echo, a soul that never had flesh, a hunger that took shape. She looked at me, but I think it's worse. I think it's a piece of hell that found a home. Then she began to cry silent tears, and she begged, "Don't give it yours." The next day, I packed my things, every journal, every record, every photo of Evelyn, and I made a plan not to run too. Seal the mirror the way it was meant to be sealed. I poured salt across the floor, nailed shut every window, painted the attic's corners with white ash and rose oil, laid Evelyn's veil over the mirror, pressed it in place with melted wax, and spoke aloud the names of every Whitlow who had ever lived here. The air turned to ice, and the mirror began to bleed, not real blood, but thick black liquid. Like ink, like oil, like memory. And in the reflection, I didn't see myself. I saw him, the figure of a hunger, the nutmeg grinning with wide hands against the glass, pushing. "You woke her, now I want you." The mirror cracked, the room shuddered, the candles blew out. I screamed, "You can have the house, but you'll never have me." Then I struck it with Evelyn's locket, with every ounce of rage, fear, and sorrow I collected since this nightmare began. And for the first time it broke, really broke. Shards exploded like glass stars across the attic. The veil burned, the shadows peeled off the walls, and the scream that followed it wasn't human. It shook, the house shook, the trees shook me, and then it was gone. The next morning I watched the sunrise from the garden for the first time since I arrived. The birds returned. The silence lifted. The house was still haunted, but no longer possessed. And Evelyn? She never came back because she didn't need to. She was finally free in me. I left Ashburn Pines that afternoon, gave the keys to the Historical Society, warned them about the mirror, and told them to burn the attic. They didn't, but that's no longer my story. I now live by the small cottage. No mirrors, just windows. I still see Evelyn in my dreams, sometimes standing in the sun, smiling whole, but sometimes when I pass a shop window at night, I swear my reflection doesn't walk with me, and sometimes I hear that voice again, "Clara," but it's only in my head, right? Right? Thanks for staying with me until the end of this haunting journey. If this story made your heart race, if you've ever felt eyes on you from the dark, subscribe, like, and share, because there are more true horrors buried in silence just waiting to be unearthed. This story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries.